build strong offensive teams. Ensure that your offensive teams drive first. Immediately then start building your defensive teams. I think that's where the next step is. You can't keep sitting on the offensive teams to keep breaking. At some point, the CEO is going to ask, sure, you're breaking stuff, but what are we doing about it? I think one point you should definitely think about is offensive gets you into the door, defensive keeps your job. Why don't we put the data in the cloud? Create an environment for people to come securely to it. So where we are able to authenticate the user and they just look at the data, everything stays on the server side and they're only looking at the browser to do it. But we also want to have browser security. That's where we do talk to SquareX also, where, hey, we've done enough controls to put on the data, but we see there is a little bit of a risk on the browser still. And that's where SquareX comes in, and where we are essentially saying, hey, how can we ensure that somebody's not taking a screenshot? First 10 years, increase your fundamental knowledge. Learn fundamental knowledge. It could be a red team or a blue team. Be fundamentally extremely strong in the first 10 years.
Hi everyone. So today I'm joined by Prasanna, my PK, known to everyone. And PK has been in the industry for over 20 years right now. I know I wrote 16 before, but it's more than 20 years. And you're currently CISO at Dkatalis, company that helps some of the group companies that includes Bank Jago, Indonesia, Pioneer, Digital Bank, and others. And you have so much experience from so many places. You're actually one of the few leaders that is deeply technical. So it would be interesting to know your background. I know that your career started in network engineering. So what drew you to cybersecurity in the first place?
First, thank you, Sasha. Thank you for bringing me here. What brings me to security? I think it's the pure joy of security. I think I started from, like you said, networking from a very, very early age, starting to build systems. But then I think that slowly started giving me the interest of how to break things. And then I made a career out of it, spent probably a good decade plus in breaking stuff. Was a pentester for quite a few number of years. I think I'd spent a little too much time as pentester. From a career growth perspective, maybe I should have switched. Then I moved into a company which allowed me to start thinking about security from a little different angle. I would say that was ThoughtWorks. And I started seeing how I could take this knowledge to build stuff. And that was a great next stepping stone, I would say, in security. Then rest is I worked for companies like Grab, and now I'm CISO for Dkatalis, which also manages Bank Jago, which is one of our largest portfolio companies. So like you said, we manage a few group companies, and Bank Jago is one of the premier ones, and it's a digital bank. So it takes a lot of my time and effort to ensure that the bank is secure.
Yeah, I was about to ask how important it is to first break stuff before you learn how to build stuff as a security leader.
I think it's very important. I think it gives you a very good perspective. It gives you perspective to realize how sometimes things could be fragile, and how do you build systems in such a way that one, you cannot predict every scenario that can happen. So what should be the bare minimums? One great book I like to always keep thinking is Anti-Fragile. Build systems which would build in such a way that you don't know what is going to happen. It would irrespectively stand true. And more and more, I'm becoming a more believer of this. Hacks are becoming more and more smarter. AI is definitely bringing in even more intelligent hacks. Today, bots are number one in bug bounty programs, which is very interesting, right? And it's more than important that you then realize that breaking is the reality. you then have a perspective to start building things, which could be like, I never would ever say that, it could be 100% secure. Never. So what can you have multi-layered approach? And I think that is my strong philosophy. It's essentially, how do you put systems in place, which if one fails, there's something else to protect it. And that comes only when you think that you've come from a background of breaking.
So what kind of systems do you think you put in place as, you grew along your career? I'm sure it wasn't like a one fix day that solved it all. So what kind of systems did you see that you were starting adding as you were growing?
If you look at my career progression, I think I started with networks, then went into applications. I spent a long time in application security. That was where my forte was. As a growth for myself personally, I think that is where I think, what do I do? So when I go to an organization, the first thing I do is go find out how strong is my offensive team. And essentially, this has been how I've been building teams. Ensure that I like the very good football analogy also. A good offense is your best defense. Make sure you break. So we break it first. Ensure that one, it helps you. Then it gives me the benefit that you could take to the senior leadership to say, hey, we do have problems. We need to get budgets. So it becomes even more easier to talk to people who are not necessarily tech, but understand the repercussions of something's happening. And when you can show it, it really resonates. So building a first step is, I've always built good offensive teams, be it here, be it in the past. Build strong offensive teams. Ensure that your offensive teams drive first. Immediately then start building your defensive teams. I think that's where the next step is. You can't keep sitting on the offensive teams to keep breaking, because at some point the CEO is going to ask, sure, you're breaking stuff, but what are we doing about it? I think one point you should definitely think about is offensive gets you into the door, defensive keeps your job, which is essentially then you start building things. Then how do we ensure that we start showing value? Why? It's like insurance. Basically, there's nobody likes to pay for insurance till they get hurt or they have to go to the hospital. You just keep paying every day, but we do. So that means there has to be ways that you can start showing controls in place, which people start thinking about it from an angle of there is a certain amount of friction that includes our own users. So your crown jewels have to go behind a frictioned wall, which basically means that they have to break multiple layers, and people are starting to see the comfort of it. I think that's once you show the offensive side and then you say that these are the controls that are in place. Yes, people are going to think, why is these controls suddenly in place? But people start appreciating it. Okay, if that was done, I have to break these steps to go to that, then it's okay. Then people are okay with that. So offensive, then defensive. And last, I would say this has been personal growth. And I think this is where I have to learn myself to keep myself better. Is incident response. Offensive and defensive are great, but I think incident response is also equally important. And as a CISO, I've now started to realize the value of it. And I think I've put a lot of time and effort into that. How do we be on top of it? What systems are in place to know, for us to know that everything is working, everything is at least secure. A good analogy I like to think as a CISO is I'm a pilot of an aeroplane, which basically means that there are systems which are there. There are people who are going to execute, and you should have enough situational awareness for you to take a decision whether things are going well or not going well. So that means you need to have enough instrumentation into your systems. You should know every change that is happening. That's how I look at it.
Wow. I think you just brought in a new school of thought that I haven't heard for a while, which is I think so many security leaders emphasize on how do I explain the ROI, sort of what is the exact impact on my revenue. But I think this is very interesting because you start from the offensive side. and you actually say, okay, before we even get to the conversation of ROI, let me show like ROI doesn't exist.
Yes.
If we don't have it in place.
Yes. We wouldn't have a business if you get hacked. And specifically when it comes to financial industry, it's more than important that security is extremely important. People look, and that's the fact. And I think why people like security is important in financial industries is from an angle that security adds trust, which basically means that, and people are comfortable, and this was a conversation I was having with someone which said that human beings find it more secure when there is friction, because mentally people also think that someone to break this, they have to know this. And they may not think it as a friction, but they might think, like a very simple example. How do you think about an OTP strategy? Like OTP is so abused these days. From do you necessarily send it only on an SMS? How do you, then there are links that as a natural progression happened. All this is because you don't want people to just forward it something. People naturally are also tend to think that the more friction, the lesser that person is able to hack.
Yeah.
And so while great product builders think from an angle that let's reduce friction out and make sure it's extremely easy, security actually looks from an angle of it cannot be very difficult. It cannot be like, it's a safe that you need 20 keys to ensure open it. People will hate it and they will not work it. I think it's a very fine balance where you have to be very careful about the right amount of friction to be there.
Yeah. To be fair, I even get a little bit upset if, let's say, I'm doing a certain transaction and there is no OTP, and I was like, you can just take my money just like that, and it becomes very worrisome. And in your experience, as you work both in Grab and then in bank right now, what are some of the differences that you saw when it comes to security and the way you approach security in financial industry versus Grab?
Very interesting. Grab, my role was a bit different. Grab I was a system builder there. I was leading a team called anti-abuse. That was a another interesting challenge, and the security problems are different for two different companies. And let's close out the Grab side first. What I was doing there, I was building the software, or what was inside, was essentially used to find out fraudsters. It was a platform, and we used what we had built to detect people who were frauding our platform itself. So the incentives were different. The incentives on a financial institution are different. The platform allowed me to know, and that was a very interesting thing, right? Like that was taking exactly what I was doing offensive and building features which were exactly taking it out. So that was pure breed offensive to defensive strategy there. Why was that needed there? Because that was the problem that was very apparent at that point there. Like people were frauding the systems. We were building interesting systems, which I think Grab today sells that product that we initially started building. And it's a great product. It gave me a lot of experience taking, and the best part was Grab was the step one where I started being a builder, where I started running engineering teams. And I had a bunch of product people, a bunch of engineers who worked with me. So I was visioning the thinking, and it also taught me how to work with people, how do we run large teams, take big problems, solve those big problems. So that was the learning from there. I did take a little bit of break. Of all of this, one of the biggest disadvantages was I ballooned up. I became around probably 130, 135 kilos. And I decided I want to change. And I took a small sabbatical. And I worked on myself to cut my weight. I did go down very badly down to probably around 70, 75 kilos, where people started asking, was I having cancer? And thankfully, Vivek would also keep saying, PK, you've gone too far. Like, yes, you should lose weight, but you cannot go that far either. And we said, okay, fine. Then I started building back on the other side, and now probably a bit decent weight. I still need to lose a little more, but that was something that I took a break, get my life into focus. And then I looked around, found this interesting space. The reason I wanted to work here was a lot of my friends were working here. That was one definite driver. And tech is the first inside when we drive this. One, it's a digital bank, so we are not necessarily doing everything like a traditional bank, but we want to do everything, but fast. We also want to make it extremely secure, but we also have to work with developers who are extremely brilliant. So how do we balance things out? My CTO at that time, and now the CEO of the company, has a very clear thought. Don't do unnecessary security. Please do security. Please do understand the right things to be done. And it's a great way. And that's exactly how I like to think about security. Let's not do security because of compliance, while regulations and those are very important, but do the right things, which essentially means putting the right controls. Think about why we are putting in a piece. We'll talk more about it, how we've thought about security. What is the most important thing in the organization? One very important thing is data. How do we ensure that the data stays secure? How do I mean by that? Traditionally, people would, let's say somebody took financial modeling. They would download the data, use it on their laptop, do an Excel sheet, work on it, and then forward it. But from a security angle, yes, there are enough tools that are there. There could be CrowdStrike running on that machine. It could be multiple endpoint security systems. But we really don't know what an endpoint is. An environment that is so error control prone, and things could go wrong, and things that I don't know about. So how did we think about the solution? We said, people need to work with this, but as security, we want to be careful about these things. So we said, what do we need? Why don't we put the data in the cloud? Create an environment for people to come securely to it. So where we are able to authenticate the user and they just look at the data, everything stays on the server side. And they're only looking at the browser to do it. But we also want to have browser security. That's where we do talk to SquareX also, where, hey, we've done enough controls to put on the data, but we see there is a little bit of a risk on the browser still. And that's where SquareX comes in, and where we are essentially saying, hey, how can we ensure that somebody's not taking a screenshot? And that's where one of my conversations happened with Vivek, wherein, hey, I know we use Google Chrome Enterprise to do the IAP authentication and all of that, but we want to add a little bit more. This is how we look at security, wherein we are saying that, so this makes the developer also happy, right? He can still continue to do what he does. We are not stopping him from doing his work. I am happier because I am very happy that the data has never reached the machine where it's dangerous. We control where it is coming in. We also control where he can send it out. If it has to be sent out to some regulator for some processing, it is only going to that specific endpoint and it cannot be taken out. When it is reaching a browser, we do want to have more controls, and that's where we want to have DLPs on the browser itself. So browser is becoming more and more the gateway of how people reach data. And that's how we tie up and ensure that the whole life cycle is controlled. So many granularities that existed throughout your journey, whether we're talking about your job at Grab or the little break that you were taking. It's so many steps that you were taking to get where you are today, because it feels like you're constantly bombarded with so many risks, with so many potential threats, that at the end of the day is also, how do you look through all of this noise and identify what's important, what's not important? And I have to say, I am so inspired by the leaders that are actually able to cut through all of this noise. What do you think helped you the most, to understand what's important and what's less important? Oh, that's a very difficult question, right? I think it's experience. It's definitely learning. So learning from education, learning from good leaders, good people who have taught such great work in security. People who have come before me have done some great work, and I think due credit. Also have the attitude to learn new things. I think that is very important. I've always, I still like to do stuff on my own. Though I have good pen testing teams, still love pen testing. I enjoy pen testing.
Yeah.
Have zeal to learn. I think that's the most important. That gives you experience to think what is more important. I think this gives you start to think to say, hey, what's the real risk? What do we prioritize first? What do you tighten out first? I think that comes through experience. Also hire good people. I think thankfully with Dkatalis, we've been blessed to hire good people, empower the people to do the right things. And that's something that we've been doing. And that's how we've been able to be nimble-footed, but deliver good results. Good security companies also are needed. They are also part of our journeys. We do build internally, but we also, some things we do also get, like, would I go and build a DLP system? It doesn't solve my problem. So I would go take a good system from outside. But would I look at a DLP which is traditional? I would question what features are needed out. What are specifics that I need? And then look for a product. I not necessarily go because, hey, we need to deploy a solution. Let's go deploy it. No, that's not the approach. The approach is, what's the problem? What's the company? How do we solve this? Will the same problem go and solve at the different company? No, every company is unique. Every organization is unique. Like all of us are. We are all individuals. We are individual human beings. I think experience. 20 years, like you said, 20 years experience does help.
I have to admit, I think before I started exploring this space, I had this belief that security must be so stressful. I almost feared it. And as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm thinking, you really have to get to the level where you also prioritize your well-being. Where I also wanted to ask about your personal transformation journey, because I think we so much focus on our career that oftentimes our personal either growth or our well-being, it's the one that being affected by it. So how did you think, like, what was the moment that you thought, okay, I want to take care of myself, and then the rest of the things kind of went for it?
I think it was a very difficult decision. I was going through enough personal issues at that time. And I remember, I wouldn't tell who I was talking to, but I was having a chat with someone and I realized that, okay, if a lot of things are not going according to what we want, stop. And that's the first thing that I did. And I said, okay, let's take a break, understand what I can control. And there are so many things that were going and I cannot control those points. What I could control was, can I fix one thing, which is my health? And that started it. And I think I did have good friends who pushed me. And I think they said, okay, come to the gym. Let's just do two good friends who just kept showing up with me in the gym. And one day led to the other. And 1.5 years later, I could start seeing the results. And I'm driven by results. So once I started seeing the results, it just motivated me to go on. What helped was also, after working so many years, it did give me a little bit of financial comfort, which allows me to take a little break. And that is important. Also, that it also allowed me to think through what I need. Where do I want to focus my energies? And that's probably it.
How do you think it changed your attitude, the way you perceive where you're going now and sort of what's next? Because I think such a massive transformation must have a direct impact on what you do in your daily life afterwards.
I really think that no problem cannot be solved. It just needs time, money, and energy. And any problem can be solved.
That's the right way to look at it. Yeah. And I know that we talked about security being, that the users are actually happy that right now there is a bit of friction. What do you think when it comes to AI, right?
Oh,
Because I think so many people can't write emails anymore without asking a question how to write emails. It's like, please help me to draft this email, even though it has all the sensitive information into it. Where do you see sort of this balance of like implementing AI and at the same time keeping some friction?
it's surprising. I just, today morning, I was looking at a very interesting video on YouTube, and someone had posted of a company. Let's not talk about the company, but the product was, it takes Python code, runs it through an AST tree, does a scan, and then basically checks if everything is okay and does certain things. And this was the company. And someone said that they did not understand what decorators do in Python, and they use this to basically show that, oh, we executed a shell. And what the basic point was, the person said, vibe coding is great, but have an understanding of what's really happening. And if you don't, what happens is you just eval a piece of code that someone is executing. And this is the problem, really. And I'm sure it will change. And there will be controls that will automatically come in. And so it's not against vibe coders, but it's also about do vibe coding, but also say that please understand the code that's getting executed. So AI is a great tool. And I'm like, email is one problem. There are now today code getting executed through them. And I think it's, while I love emails being created by AI, I hate writing emails. And I think if emails can be written by AI, great, sure, no problem. But I think where security really needs to come in is what's happening. Today, AI is getting into code, and we need to be, it is definitely going to solve it. So it's like anything that in security is, it's a tool. If it's played by the right people, it'll generate great results. But if it's not planned and you just take things that the AI wrote and put it into production without necessarily doing any reviews on it, it can get hacked. So you got to be careful about it.
Yeah. Are you saying that if you want to implement AI, you have to know the mechanics behind it before you allow it?
Understand. That doesn't mean that, do I understand everything a large LLM is doing? No, I probably don't. At least have what is possible. Like at least give thoughts about what is chain of thought. What does the system do? Once your code has come back, like what do, like let's say if you're using a tool like Cursor and you've told it, vibe coded it, and told it to execute, don't just go execute it. Maybe one simple thing, which I also heard in one of the YouTube videos, was give it a prompt to say, explain what has been written. And then think, is that making sense? What are your inputs? What are your outputs? What are the controls that have you put? Security is logic. That's it. And are you doing basic logic checks before you put it into production? You don't want your hard-earned time and energy wasted on getting hacked.
Do you see it as being a common mistake? Because I would assume that quite a few solutions out there is more of a like black box where you don't really know what like is getting into your system. Do you see it as a common problem when it comes to security?
LLM is a black box, right? And it's closed source. We don't know what Anthropic is running or what Gemini is doing because they don't share that to us. I think when we look at here is what code is being written. So when you say black box, are you talking only about the LLMs or are you talking about
any solution out there?
I think it's very open, right? Like, would you consider writing an email and you cleaning up? So would you go to the extent of writing a local LLM and you execute on your local environment? And then, yes, it's great secure, but is it something that you would be able to do? Not really. I think the normal person would not be able to do it. I think emails, I love the features. I love the polishing. I definitely use it. But for specific coding, I would use it. But I would also say that use common sense. Look at it. Ensure that you read it before you take it to production. Understand what the LLM is doing. Use it as a tool. Use it as a tool which helps you to save time. What it has definitely done is it gives you speed.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it really simplifies a lot of our processes. Even though I do encourage myself now to write my own email, so I still remember how to type things. But what are some of the threats that you see are likely to come out in the next few years? I know it's very open-ended question. We can't exactly predict, but what do you think leaders have to slowly start doing today to prepare themselves for tomorrow?
Like you said, you can't predict. I really don't know. Hackers are good and they are getting more tools also. So I really don't know what would come. What we can do is, how do you put layers of protection in front? Ensure that multiple layers are in front of systems which you have to protect. Most important, I feel these days, is incident response. And I think I am spending more and more of my time on the incident response side. And like, if I today look at my day, I would say at least 50% of my time is now being built on to say, what systems do we have to give us real-time attention? Like, how do we build visibility? And it's not simply saying that, hey, put a SOC system and get a result out. And that for sure is important. Yeah. But it could be as simple as saying, in my cloud environment, how do we know change management happens? How do you know what is changed in the cloud? The cloud is such a versatile system that so many developers are making change across the environment. Yeah. How do we think about, and these are things that we work with our partners to understand. Like, a simple thing could be, take GCP's asset API and use that to create wrappers to say, okay, when asset is changing, you let us know. If this change is, then you have the right people to say, find out what change is security sensitive. You don't want everything, but you want to know when certain things change, you better get a visibility to it and somebody has look at it and think about it. And that is important. I think having clear understanding of what you have is very important as you build security.
Or be friends with hackers. Or be a hacker.
That's dangerous.
With good ones.
How do you know how they're good? I still can't read people's minds. So that's dangerous. So
I think one of the sort of phrases that keeps coming back to me when I spoken to Vivek once was, on hacker side, like, you practically, you just only have to win once.
Yes.
But on the defender side, you have to win every single time.
Yes.
And it's much harder to be a defender than it is to be a hacker.
Very true. I agree. Have the thought process which Singapore security follows. It's not a if, it's when. So you better have preparedness continuous. And like what Vivek said, it's true. You have to win all the time. But that's the job.
Whenever, let's say, someone who is looking to grow fast in their career comes to you and say, PK, what should I do today to become a CISO one day? What would you tell them?
First 10 years, increase your fundamental knowledge. I think that is critical. And I'm so thankful that I did that. I did not make enough money. But the next 10 years, build systems. And that's when you start making money. Learn fundamental knowledge. It could be a red team or a blue team. Be fundamentally extremely strong in the first 10 years. And I really see that. Today I could understand a conversation happening between developers, or if it's a business context, you can synthesize and start understanding of what should be the security control to be placed. That comes because of that first 10 years of good security work. There is no, I can tell you, Vivek is a good friend, and I still remember when he was telling me how his first few days were. He would go and tell the teams and say, "Hey, you give me the switch, I will write the code on how." I still remember he told me once, I wrote the code for a spanning tree protocol, and that's all we all did. In the first 10 years, there's no way. You have to put in that grunt work. Go into one, go deep, and a CISO cannot. So you have to have fundamentally a deep knowledge in some things, and then broader knowledge about things. I've started appreciating what GRC is and why it is important. You had asked me probably 7 years back, I would have thought, not so much. Like tech is the only thing that is important. But now I have having organizational policies and ensuring those policies are also important. I value it. And now as CISOs, I totally understand the value of doing it. Something as a pen tester, I hated it. I'm like, why do you have policies? Like, what does it really do? But today I totally understand it. For an organization, you do need to have technical controls, but you need procedural controls also to be in place. That's how human beings are. And it comes from years of learning, and also having humility that, hey, there are things that you have to learn as you go also. And never stop learning. And I even today I learn something, and there are interesting things that you pick up. Never stop. A good CISO is always learning. So
what is the latest thing that you learned that you think, okay, this is very interesting and everyone should look into it?
Cloud code. I think it's an excellent piece to work with. Cloud doesn't pay me, but I really like it. I like cloud code. I've been playing around in AI for some time, and we've been looking at bringing AI into security. I can't go into the details of how we've implemented, but we've done small things but have very impactful value to us. We've also realized that if you take a huge problem and try putting AI into it, it starts hallucinating. But in a very focused, narrow, specific places, AI does excellent work, saves human people. And we've been able to and we've tested it enough, and it gives us very good results. And personally, these days I've been writing a lot with cloud code, and I played around a little bit. We started with IDER, then looked at Cursor, but I think cloud code is my personal favorite at this point.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm sure everyone will be taking notes. What should they try the next?
What they're doing in cloud code is a different thing. I'm sure you can create tools, you can create automations, you can create automations to your laptops. Very interesting things can be done.
What kind of areas do you think would it be more useful to use AI? As you mentioned, it's like if it's too much data, start hallucinating. What are some of the areas that you would advise security leaders to look into, where they could, save the resources and think how they can simplify and streamline processes?
That's a very broad statement, right? The problem is I don't know what the other CISOs are looking at and what kind of solutions would be needed. If you take a simple example, instead of asking your AI to write code, what if you have your AI to just look at your hot fixes being deployed? It's a very small piece. It's a small amount of code that is going into it. It also means that someone is deploying a code to fix something in the production, which means that things are breaking and there's a lot of pressure to ensure that the security, like when things are breaking is when you need to have a cool mind to then say, hey, yes, it's going wrong, but with the change you're deploying, can create a security issue. So how do you balance it out? And then one thing could be is, do you then say, hey, can I pen test it there? Nobody's going to accept it. It's bleeding at this point of time. So they do need to fix. A small thing could be is have an AI at that point of time. Do a AI review of the hot fix, and it doesn't necessarily need human time. And you at least have a small control to be in there to ensure that what you're pushing may not create a bigger security risk. Is it small enough? Yes, because a hotfix is not necessarily huge. But did it have oversight of security? Yes, it had an oversight. And did it solve 100%? Maybe not. But is it safe enough for you to go ahead and then have a pen tester come in after a few days or a few hours after the whole bleed is stopped? That's something that you could look at. And that's a very small thing I would think at this point of time. But look at scenarios that you could create like this.
It's super fascinating and interesting, because I think with all the conversations that are going on, a lot of people focus so much on the data leakage and not necessarily, like when you say the word AI, right? People a lot focus on data leakage. How do I protect against this? Not how do I use it to augment whatever I have today. How do you look at it as a sort of double-edged sword?
So we worry about, so when you say data leakage, which essentially means the data going to the LLM itself, right? And that's a valid problem. And I think we should be careful. And I think there are interesting ways where our partners like Google do help us also, right? Like essentially our LLMs are also, they have a concept of model garden, and you have your own version wherein they create an LLM, and our knowledge specific information is ring fenced to ensure that it doesn't go into the LLM. So all that are some things that you work with your partner. So ensure when you work with your LLM, is it, so what you do as an individual with an LLM and what you do as an enterprise with an LLM are two different things, right? Like an enterprise knowledge, you're not necessarily tying up directly to the huge LLM. The enterprise is essentially going through a process where we do take the benefit of the large LLM, but we also take our organizational knowledge and ensure that ring fences are in place and ensure that that is not going out. That's from the organizational security, right? Like that is how we ring fence it, so that our knowledge stays within the company. But we also want the benefit of LLM. I think if the genie is out, you cannot now put it back. You have to work with LLMs.
Yeah, you have to, because I think in a way, there are so many companies that right now are thinking, okay, how do I outperform my competition? And if you're not fast enough, then you cannot catch up.
You can't.
Yeah.
But I think we have to be careful. I think that's the point. I think use AI to help you, but be very, very cautious. And that's how we see it.
I wanted to ask, given that Jago operates mostly on mobile platforms, which are typically less well defended, do you think that increases the attack surface for your users?
You're right. We are mobile first. Does it increase attack surface as compared to an API driven? Not really, right? Like I think it's sometimes mobiles are also secure, and we do put in controls to ensure that there is safety. But the fundamental is we also have to look at what is our backend controls that are there. Do we not store a lot on the back end, on the front end, and everything? All the controls sit on the back end, and we are ensuring that controls are in place. We do have to think about mobile security, but it does not add or decrease anything. It is a part of the infrastructure, and we have to put controls even there. I'm not necessarily going into the operational controls of what are existing and not existing. It also gives us certain benefits. Think of it, in the previous systems, if you would have left your passbook outside, I come from a much older world where there were passbooks. People's bank statements would be filled in a passbook. And if I left it on the table, anybody could see my bank balance. That risk is gone today, right? Like if it's in a mobile, there's inherent security controls that you get because of a mobile. You do have face authentication or your fingerprint authentication before it goes on. So we do get those benefits. So it's not that all technology means it's bad.
That's true. That's a right way to look at it. I think there is so much focus on, risk, but then at the end of the day, the amount of benefit that you get out of it can outweigh everything.
Yes, it is risk, but you have to balance it.
Yeah. And then another question was, you're a regular speaker at security conferences. Reduced, but still.
Age is catching up.
What's one misconception about cybersecurity in financial services that you frequently encounter and want to correct?
security people only think about controls and they only stop people from going forward. That
Are they not?
that is generally banks definitely have that thought that we're just stopping people. No, we are actually helping people. We're keeping the place secure. And I think it can be done with the right balance. I think that's the misconception that I would think.
Do you feel like most of your colleagues that are also in financial institutions feel the same way?
When cloud came in, it did bring in a lot of changes. I think cloud fundamentally democratized it a lot. I think what was very data center and tightly controlled to now being a little different, I think there is a little bit of a change. It is improving. Security space is definitely changing there.
It's good. I think it's amazing to see that. I think even users start to understand it today, that it is not necessarily, as you mentioned, someone constantly trying to control you.
Yes.
But rather them trying to help you.
We cannot exist without they existing, and they cannot exist without we helping. And I think it's balance. Now, take an example. If developer doesn't write code, what am I securing? So it's balance. We are operational people who are looking at customers and they're helping them. So when you look at customers' data, what controls have to be in place? You don't want to have a situation where something unwanted happened. We do want to have the trust in place. So I think, like you said, people are understanding. People are changing.
Yeah. PK, we have this little tradition on our podcast where typically our previous guest would ask question to our next guest.
Wow. Okay.
So our previous guest had this question to you, which is, how do you prepare your organization to build trust in the age where human and machine identities are increasingly being blurred?
That is very good question. And I don't think that problem has been sorted yet. I was listening to Auth Zero's podcast the other day, and they were talking about I'm not fully clear about how they've thought through some of these things. And this is a very unique problem, right? Like when you today sign in with your Google account and you're saying that, sure, I want to share my details with someone. It's you taking a cautious decision, and you could say, okay, don't give this permissions and things. And now an agent is doing it on behalf of you. How much do you give and how much do you not give? I think it's a problem that's not been solved fully yet. I think we would have some very interesting companies that come in this space, and we would also have to think about these problems. As humans, we've not solved these problems fully yet, because I think we've just starting to think about agents. And people would think about security and agents. I know Auth Zero is thinking about some of these problems. They did some very interesting work with JWT. Now they are trying to think about, hey, how agent infrastructure should be. And I think very briefly from what I understood was they said, hey, we would have a way where human would come in, he would authorize it once, and then next previous transactions would come and approve by itself. That's their approach. I know some of Gemini's thought processes, once approved, follow the same process again. And I think that's also something that the agents have been doing.
Yeah.
The answer is it's a space which we should watch. A few large companies would definitely get created. Yeah,
definitely. And as a hacker yourself, I'm sure you'd want to stay on top of things. What are your favorite podcasts that you listen to, that you get all of these insights and recommend to people?
I mostly podcasts, I listen to very different kind of podcasts. I'm either listening to Andrew Huberman or because they were very helpful or David Goggins and some of these guys I listen to. I do listen to a lot of YouTube, and sometimes I listen to the algorithm of YouTube teaching me what or the tech stuff that I want to listen to. Twitter is the largest way which I pick my information. I think I'm always on Twitter. I like to see what's happening, and that's how I see what something is. And if something is interesting, then I would Google and find out what is happening on that. And pick, I think for me, Twitter is very interesting, or X as it's called now.
X,
Yes. Reddit, some of the Reddits that are interesting on security. And chat with friends, and some things like Vivek, which we talk about, and we like, hey, okay, did you see this hack? This was interesting. And it's a small group that I share with people, and when we just talk within that group.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, security is, everyone says it's such a massive market, but at the end of the day, it's relatively small ecosystem regarding the number of people involved, and you're so interconnected that it is you would like be disadvantaged to yourself if you don't interact with people as much as possible in this space. Very important to interact. If you don't talk, you wouldn't know what's happening. Or you can be silent. And I'm a bit of an introvert. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm an introvert or an extrovert, but I don't talk as much as Vivek talks on Twitter. I would just silently watch what's happening. But at least be there, see what's happening. Yeah. What question would you like to ask to our next guest? I didn't prepare for this, so anything that comes to mind, you can like throw something at them as they threw something at your face. Clearly, I was not prepared for that. Something that I read recently, very interesting, was a bot is now the number one position in bug bounties. It's a very interesting thought. How do they see the natural progression of this, of an offensive teams to be looking at? The question would be, what would be the next iteration of an offensive team look like? Wow, that's a great question. And I would look forward to listen to that answer on that. I'll make sure to pass it to you. Thank you. Thank you so much, PK. Thank you so much, Asha. Fun. It was so informative. I think to understand the way you approach security, it's so important to understand the person's background and each step that they went through to be where they are today. And I think clearly you are such a technical leader, and it shapes the way you look at security today. Which I think at the end of the day is inevitable with the future of security we're looking at today. So it's been so much fun, PK. It was amazing. Thank you. Thank you for having me.